Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for the landmark first episode of Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy. Whether you're watching live or catching the recorded version, I truly, truly appreciate your presence here this evening. So thank you for joining me. By the way, you can join us by all these routes: YouTube, LinkedIn, everything you see here are ways that you can join. You can also go on my website, and on the website, there will be links to join as well. You'll also see all the future episodes and all kinds of great information about what's coming up and what's exciting. So, for decades, I have had the honor and privilege of working with thousands of patients and individuals navigating sexual dysfunction. As an advanced practice, board certified urology clinical nurse specialist and a certified sexuality counselor, my PhD is in sexual health research. I felt inspired by my patients and countless participants from my presentations across the United States and across the world. So I created this podcast because I believe in the transformative power of accurate information when it comes to healthcare. Well, when it comes to sex, intimacy, and relationships, they're often portrayed in ways that don't really reflect real life experiences. And that leaves many people feeling isolated and misunderstood. What's wrong with me? Why aren't I like other people? But the truth is, there's no cookie cutter, one size fits all approach to love and intimacy. Here in this space, during these episodes, everyone is welcome. Regardless of your sexual orientation, your gender identity, or your relationship style, you are welcome here. This podcast is really a judgment-free learning space where you can feel seen, heard, and valued. My goal is pretty simple with each episode. It's to provide you with evidence-based, accurate information to help you deepen your connections with others, to enhance intimacy in your life, and to build more fulfilling relationships. I'm thrilled, and I am so honored that you have come here and joined me on this journey. Together, we're going to explore a wide variety of topics about sex and intimacy, and you are going to meet some amazing, unbelievably brilliant guests that are going to take us along the way in this journey. So let's dive in. Let's get started. Tonight, we are going to be talking about Sex and Intimacy 101. Let's get rolling. All right. So first of all, let's go through some terminology because I think those terms can be a little tricky. And when we think about the terminology, let's start with sexuality. And I would bet that as many people as we have on this podcast and people who are watching in the future, that if we looked at all those different people, they would all have a different definition for things like sexuality. Everybody experiences those things individually. Some things to do with sexuality are intrinsic. We're born with them, and that's part of who we are. But sexuality is multidimensional. It's dynamic. What you think sexuality is when you are a child is different than an adolescent, right? Or an adult, or an older adult, like when you get to be my age, as an older adult. Sexuality and what you believe that is may change. For some people, sexuality might be defined as that sense of being male or female. Some people don't identify male or female, but identify binary. Whatever way you look at sexuality, I do think that it's multidimensional, and I do think it can be derived from several things. If we look at the fact that it can be culturally derived, look at the average age of losing your virginity. You can believe it's very different in China than it is in the United States. So depending on your culture, your religion, different things that impact what you believe and what you think about sexuality. For this episode and for future episodes, basically when we talk about sex, we're talking about the physical activity between people. It often involves genital stimulation. And it may be penetrative in nature, penetrating one or the other partner or both. It may be non-penetrative, or what we call outer course. Don't worry if you don't understand some of those terms. We will be talking about all of it during these different episodes, and you will become very familiar with penetrative, non-penetrative sex, outer course, a lot of the terminology. Why? Because everyone is different. And so sexual needs vary greatly between person to person. And that's really important to remember. What one person values may be different than another. How one person wants to have sex or express their sexuality could be completely different. Now, when we talk about intimacy, sex and intimacy, are they the same thing? I think they're two distinct, differentiated terms. So let's talk about intimacy. What is intimacy? We talked about sex. That has to do more with the physical act and often involves genital stimulation. So intimacy refers to a deep and meaningful connection characterized by emotional closeness, trust, and mutual understanding, where you feel truly known, accepted, and valued. I think that's a pretty good working definition. Now, Elaine Hatfield, one of the experts in this area, said it's a process by which two people attempt to move towards complete communication on all levels. Okay, so we got a couple who's fighting. I know couples don't fight, right? Yeah, couples fight all the time. Fighting actually and disagreeing is actually normal. But so the couple's fighting and they're not talking to each other. They're not speaking to each other. Okay, can they have sex? What do you think? Yeah. People who aren't speaking to each other do have sex. Some people even find that exciting. So you can have sex even when you're not speaking to each other. But here's the thing. Can you have intimacy if you're not speaking to each other? I would say no, because if you're not communicating on the most basic level, how can you communicate on a more meaningful, profound level? So that couple could have sex, but they may not have intimacy, that deep connection. So hopefully those terms make sense to you. And if you have any questions about them, we will get to that during the question and answer section as well. Or you can throw it in the chat and Vic will let me know the questions there. By the way, kudos to Vic. I have to give him great kudos. Vic is a nurse who's worked in urology like I have for many years. And he has 4 different podcasts. This is his 4th, but he has an amazing podcast called Uronurse and another one called UroPatient for urology patients and urology nurses. And he has done an incredible job getting information out there. And he is the person he is the production company for this. So I have to give kudos out to Vic, and you'll meet him later when the questions come because he will come online with us. Okay. But let's differentiate intimacy a little further. There's different types of intimacy. Emotional intimacy, sharing emotions, fears, dreams, building a bond through mutual empathy. That empathy, not sympathy, but empathy, trying to really understand each other and get each other and supporting each other. That's emotional intimacy. There's physical intimacy, expressing closeness through touch, affection, or sexual activity. So that fits right with sex as well. There's intellectual intimacy. That's engaging in stimulating conversations. Those are those great conversations you have where you really connect with someone and you're sharing ideas and feeling really deeply connected on a mental level. There's spiritual intimacy, which is connecting over shared values, beliefs, or a sense of purpose. So there's different parts to intimacy as well. And hopefully the terminology is starting to make sense. So do we need connection? Do we really need to be connected to other people? Do you believe we do? Well, I'm here to tell you we do. All right, I know there's some nurses on here because I've already seen that some of you nurses signed on, so you know this. And you can put it in the chat if you want, if a baby does not bond to a human, if they don't bond to a human being, what happens to them? What's it called? It's called failure to thrive. Babies die if they don't bond to other humans. So do we need connection with other human beings? You better believe it. Every single one of us needs connection to other human beings. Yes, thank you, Zymora. I see that you got FTT, failure to thrive. It's a nurse practitioner I know as well. So, and so glad you're here with us this evening. All right. So I love Brene Brown. If you have not seen any of Brene Brown's books, her amazing books, or her podcasts, or her TED talk that's totally viral and has been seen, I think it's one of the most popular TED talks out there. She gives the best definition of connection, and that's the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, when they feel heard, and when they feel valued. And she throws in a little later, and not judged by the other. So that's what connection is. Okay, people, I don't know about you, but I want me some more of that, feeling seen, heard, and valued by the people who matter in my life. Um, that sounds like the greatest thing in the world to me, is that kind of connection. Um, I think that is amazing. I have been fortunate to have that kind of connection with so many people. My parents before they passed away, my best friend, several of my really good friends, my amazing wife of 39 years in April, um, and so many people I've had that connection with, and there's nothing better. So we're all hardwired for it. If you've ever heard of Daniel Goleman, if you haven't seen his work, Daniel Goleman actually wrote the book on emotional intelligence. You've probably heard of that. You have IQ and EQ, and emotional intelligence is a little different. But what I really want to focus on is he wrote another book after that on social intelligence. And the whole book talks about how you, me, we are hardwired for connection to others. It is not optional. We are hardwired for connectivity with other human beings. Interesting. I think Mother Teresa got it right. She said something pretty brilliant. She said a lot of things pretty brilliant. She said, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. We belong to each other. So, love and belonging. All right. I want you to pick back into your brain and think a little bit about when you were in high school or college. Remember Abraham Maslow and the hierarchy of needs? Remember, you know what I'm talking about, people? Okay. I know I learned it several times in high school and college, but pretty brilliant stuff based in research. Love and belonging is a basic human need, like food and water and air. It's a basic human need. It's not up there with self actualization. It's a basic human need. So we all need love and belonging. A lot of times when I work with sexual trauma patients, they're really struggling with shame and they're struggling with belonging. Do they really belong? Are they worthy? Because they've been through some really difficult, horrific things, and it can be really challenging. Because vulnerability, when we do connect deeply, vulnerability is scary. It's scary because when we're vulnerable, we can get hurt. Many, many things can happen. We can be sad, we can be angry, we can be upset, we can be betrayed. If you've lived long enough, you've probably felt betrayed by something in your life or had betrayal. But here's the thing. Vulnerability, even though it's scary, it is the only path to love and belonging. Brene Brown, who has done a lot of research on vulnerability, says it is the single path to love and belonging. I don't know about you, and creativity. I want more of that in my life. Creativity, love and belonging, all sounds good to me. So we do need connection with people, but we have to be vulnerable. So we shield ourselves, we numb. How do we numb? Some people shop. Some people shop and use their credit cards a lot. Some people use alcohol. Some people use drugs. Some people work. I am guilty. I have been a bit of a workaholic at times. I'm I'm learning to be rather than do at this later stage in my life, but it took me a long time to learn that. And so I threw myself a lot into my work because we don't have to think about it. We don't have to be hurt if we just numb ourselves with these things. If we make ourselves so busy we don't have to think about it, or we have a couple cocktails each evening so we forget about it, or now in Illinois for sure we smoke some marijuana or we chew some gummies and we can forget about our troubles. But you can't selectively numb. When you numb everything. So it's a little tricky. Numbing's not the greatest thing. I want to be really present in my life, and that takes vulnerability. Okay, so wow, Masters and Johnson did incredible research. My PhD is in research. I'm a researcher. I'm a published researcher. I'm a funded researcher. I've done research. Research is difficult, and you have to go through this thing called the Institutional Review Board, which decides if you are doing ethical and safe research. And my stuff always gets tagged because it's sensitive, because it's sexual. Masters and Johnson, okay, people, they paid people to have sex in front of them. They paid people to masturbate in front of them. These studies will never be repeated because I don't know how you would get that through an institution review board in this day and age and do that research. So it is amazing landmark research that will probably never be repeated, but it's pretty cool. And I think, wow, I just ask people questions and talk to people, and my stuff is called sensitive. But Masters and Johnson did this awesome research that taught us so much. So they created this sexual response cycle, which begins with excitement. It starts to build your blood pressure, your pulse, your tactile sensation. You start to feel more on your skin. You start to be more in tune with what's happening. And it builds and it builds and it builds. But you don't want it to keep building forever, so it eventually plateaus. Plateau is a wonderful place to be because it's before orgasm, but everything feels really wonderful. It feels really good, and you just want it to keep going. Then the orgasm, which is somewhat of a resolution, occurs, and the final resolution afterwards. But look, does anybody see a problem here? With the male, that takes about 3 minutes. With the female, that takes about 13 minutes. Okay, if men and women are partnered, ding, 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 NASA, we have a problem here. 4 times longer for a female to climax in general than a male. So in general, men who are partnered with women have to delay their climax and learn to control their climax because they will generally go 4 times quicker. Even men who are partnered with men, or women partnered with women, or whoever you're partnered with. If you want to time your orgasms, it does take some work. And climaxing, again, from their studies, happens 4 times quicker in a male than a female. And it makes sense. Why? Because the male genitalia is more exposed and easier and more easily stimulated than a clitoris, which is deeper inside and has very similar structures. But anyway, so it's kind of cool. We can talk more about that later. But at any rate, so here's the model they developed. It starts with desire. Oh my gosh, I feel driven towards sex. And then I become aroused. In the female, the vagina widens, deepens, moistens, gets ready. The penis becomes erect. Both parties become ready for whatever is next. A male, female, male to male, whatever they're doing. Then they hit plateau. You see that here, plateau. And then after plateau comes orgasm. And you see that second line, that's the female who can be multi-orgasmic, and then resolution. Somebody rolls over and they're done. Okay, it does happen. You know this, but hopefully there's some cuddling and good stuff afterwards too. This is the sexual response model, and I think it's a good model. But Rosemary Bassan and OB-GYN took that model and tried to apply it to her women. And so you see this new model that she came up with, because it was a researcher's nightmare, folks. What happened was a third of the people in her study, the women, said, it doesn't start with desire or excitement for me. That's not how it starts. That's not what draws me to sex. Okay. Rosemary Bassan was like, we have to study this and understand this. And the women were very vocal and very articulate to tell them that it starts with emotional intimacy, emotional engagement. Engage me. And then that motivates a sexually neutral partner to be responsive. And you see, then we kiss, we hug, there's some stimulation, there's some psychological and biological factors that start coming into play with arousal. And then you see way over on the other side, finally, you see desire starting to come in there. So this model, and it's circular, it goes round and round, and then it feeds into emotional intimacy or engagement, getting each other, and it goes round and round. I think this model's brilliant. And I find for men and women both, it can apply, because I definitely have men and women who say, wow, it doesn't always start with desire. Sometimes it starts with engagement or emotional engagement with a partner. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And you'll hear more about these models in the future, but just wanted to introduce a little bit of sexual response cycle models. So sexual dysfunction, and this is what in my clinic we work a lot with, and it's basically the consistent impairment of a person or a couple's normal sexual interest, response, or function. There's difficulties with function or their response or even their desire or interest. It can be broken into classifications or categories for sexual dysfunction. A hypoactive sexual desire disorder is where I just don't feel a need or a desire for sex. I don't think about it like I used to, or I just don't want to do it like I used to, or I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't have those desires. My friends, my girlfriends, my boyfriend, my friends talk about it, but I don't have that desire. That would be a lifetime uh, sexual desire disorder. And sometimes it can be lifetime. Sometimes it can happen over time from different things like menopause or other things that can happen in a woman or in a man's life that affect their sexual desire. So a desire disorder or dysfunction. Sexual arousal dysfunction is where you don't become aroused. For a man, that means he doesn't get hard erections. Erectile dysfunction is an arousal disorder. Premature ejaculation is an arousal disorder where they're over aroused and as well. Lack of lubrication and vaginal atrophy. Okay, when women go through menopause, over 50% of them find that the vagina shrinks and dries, and they have difficulty with vaginal dryness. Atrophy means shrinkage. Very, very common. Over 50% of women will go through this during menopause. So, sexual arousal dysfunction, I will tell you, the number one thing that brings men in my office is erectile dysfunction. The number one thing that brings women in the office is vaginal atrophy and dryness. So those are the things that bring people in terms of sexual dysfunction problems that bring them into the clinic. Why don't people come in? Desire is the most common complaint of men and women age 18 to 59, both men and women. A lack of desire. But it doesn't always bring them to the clinic because when you don't have desire, sometimes you don't have motivation to fix it. You think, I don't have a desire, but it doesn't bother me. And and some people it bothers, some people it does. So it doesn't always bring them to the clinic. Sometimes they come to the clinic because it bothers their partner. Or sometimes they're like, I used to feel this, but I don't now. But so I do see desire disorder, but the most common things I see: men, erectile dysfunction; women, pain due to vaginal dryness and atrophy. And we'll have a whole segment on that. We have so many great people coming up to speak to us as guests. Amy Hall will be joining us, and you can look on the schedule to see when. And she's going to be talking about vaginal dryness and hot flashes. Then Dr. Ann Katz is going to come on and talk about lubricants. What lubricant? When should I lubricate? What's a moisturizer? What do I do with all this stuff? So lots of good stuff coming. Orgasm dysfunction is difficulty reaching orgasm. You may be anorgasmic and never had an orgasm in your life and you don't orgasm at all, or you may have a diminished sensation of orgasm or difficulty reaching orgasm, or you may have been able to orgasm perfectly well before a surgery, for example, in the pelvic area, but now you can't. But those are orgasm dysfunction issues. Pain disorders, we talked a little bit about. Dyspareunia is a fancy word that talks about anything penetrating the vagina causes pain. A tampon, a penis, a finger, it can cause pain. It can be deep or it can be superficial, either one. Genital urinary syndrome of menopause, GSM, is what Amy Hall will be talking about when she comes to speak to you as our guest. And I'm really excited about that because this is what women go through, and I think it's a really important topic. Vulvodynia is pain in the vulva area. Let's make something perfectly clear. You may not know some of this terminology. The vagina is a muscular tube that leads from the external genitalia to the cervix of the uterus. That's what the vagina is. But the vulva is all the external things. So the labia majora, the labia minora, as well as the clitoris and the mons and the vaginal introitus, which is the opening. Those are all the vulva. So when the vulva burns and hurts, that's vulvodynia. Vaginismus is spasms of the pelvic floor or vaginal spasms. You can also have chronic genital and pelvic pain. Both men and women have these problems, and it can be debilitating. Just want to introduce you to some of these thoughts as we move along and these ideas during this Sex 101 course here. All right, so we need to expand our thinking about intimacy and sex. Why are we having sex if it's not for reproduction? When you look at the research, why are people having sex? There's two things that come out. This might not be a surprise to you. Pleasure? Hello, it's supposed to be fun. I tell people, okay, in my clinic, my homework is fun. Don't make sex not fun. Oh, this one lady said to me, oh my God, he takes the pill. And as soon as he takes it, my blood pressure starts going up because I'm like, okay, how's this going to go? Is it going to go okay? Is it going to be, what's going to happen? I've had men say, I'm so worried because I had trouble in the past. What if I have trouble now? Well, anxiety is going to cause a lot of trouble for you. So it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be about pleasure and connectedness. And if that's what it's about, there are many, many, many ways to experience sexual pleasure. Don't limit yourself to believe we're taught and programmed to believe, even with the bases and stuff, well, it all leads to penetration. Penetration is the ultimate sex. Not necessarily. There's manual stimulation. There's mutual vibration. There is oral stimulation. It just depends on what you like and what you want. And there's a variety of ways to get there. The excitement sometimes comes from the anticipation of how will we get there this time? What will we do this time? And we are going to have some amazing talks that are coming our way on keeping the flame alive in relationships. We have Dr. Jennifer Littner coming to talk about that. We have the man who wrote the book on rekindling desire, Dr. Barry McCarthy, coming to talk about desire. Lots of fun things to come. Let's talk just a little bit about relationships, and then we're going to go to question and answers. There's so much we could talk about, but we all want connection. In fact, research shows that what we want more than anything is deep, meaningful intimacy with people, but it's what we're most afraid of too. Life's hard. And so when you get home, you've given all day long. And what does your partner get? Sometimes the worst of what we got. I know sometimes I bring home my grumpiness and my crabbiness and I got nothing else good to give. But who deserves the best of who we are? Our partner, the person we love. Can it be true that there's more than one truth, more than one perspective? Is that true? Or it's I'm right, you're wrong, and that's all there is to it? Okay, I give you a scenario to see, can there be two completely real realities that are both true? You go to Great America Six Flags, whatever you want to call it, and you go on the roller coaster, the Raging Bull, whatever you love. Okay, you go to that roller coaster with your partner who hates roller coasters. You are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do a deep dive on this and do all this crazy stuff on the roller coaster. It's going to be the greatest thing in the whole universe. That's all wonderful. And you get off and you're pumped and you're excited. And you're like, that was so awesome. You were laughing, you were smiling, you were having such a good time. Your partner threw up. Now they look green. They hated it and are just completely sick now and sitting on the bench outside of there like, oh, I'm dying. Which one is right? What is the truth? Your truth? Their truth? Does your truth have to negate their truth? Can there be more than two realities? I think this is a really important thing when we're working with couples that we find is there are more than two realities and each one is valid and each one's real. And can we honor each other's realities? So can we improve relationships and life satisfaction? Absolutely. We're going to have people coming to talk about relationships, but just a little bit. Communication's always something people are struggling with. So I gave you a little acronym called ATTUNE, which is a way to work together and be more empathetic. It's more than just active listening. It's attuning, using your empathy, using your curiosity. A is for awareness of your partner's emotions, and then T is for tolerance, that there are more than two valid perceptions and that their emotions are real and valid, even if you don't understand why they felt that way or didn't intend for them to feel that way, it's real. Turning towards your partner's negative emotions is important. Can you sit with those negative emotions, understanding your partner's negative emotions, what they're feeling and why they're feeling it? And then N is non-defensiveness. If you're creating your defense the whole time they're talking, you're missing everything they're saying. And then E is for empathy, that empathy is expressed, that I may not know exactly what it's like for you, but I hear everything you're saying. And then if you can actually repeat back to them, this is what I'm understanding that you're going through. So, just a few tips. We're going to have a whole lot more on communication and relationships from our life and marriage family therapist. So, more to come. So, basically, sex and intimacy are part of the human journey. Connectedness and belonging are basic human needs. We all need them. Sexual and intimacy issues can be addressed successfully with the help of professionals, and communication can be a critical and can be absolutely critical for connection and intimacy. So, I hope you've learned a little bit from what we've talked about so far, and we're going to take some questions. It can be really challenging. And so, just wanted to introduce some terms to you, some of the things that are in the world of sexuality, and hopefully things are making sense to you. But let's take some question and answers before we finish out our session this evening.
Hey, Jeff, that was really great. I got to tell you that I think that you really put some food for thought in there. Um, and I just want to get some of the questions that came through while you were talking. So let's bring some of those up. Gina Kevens, I'm Jeff's best friend, and so I'm proud of him. I think we're all proud of you, Jeff. What a wonderful podcast. I will be asking a question about what age does sex slow down for men and women? Is it different?
And that is an excellent, excellent question. And actually, so people are always like, okay, some of my friends seem to have sex all the time. Some of my friends never have sex. What's normal? Well, first off, the average American has sex an average of once a week, maybe once to twice, but the latest averages say once a week. So if you're wondering what's normal, first off, normal is what works for you and whatever it is, what is really normal. But what you find in the research is about 1 to 2 times a week would be average. And that's more common, as you said, Gina, in younger people. As you get older into your 50s and 60s, that's an average, right? So maybe people that are younger are having sex more often, but the average over the years is about once a week to twice a week. And most often about once a week when you average it. Now, people are having sex in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, definitely, but they're not always having sex as often. Testosterone does drop in both men and women as we age. Every decade, it tends to drop a little bit. Some people retain their sex drive, their desire, their libido, but not everybody. So, is every marriage, every relationship, every couple, whether it's man, man, woman, woman, man, woman, are couples all engaging in sex in their relationship? 1 in 5 relationships is considered non-sexual or low sexual. They have sex less than 10 times a year. And so if you are one of those people, you are not alone. That is not unusual. It does happen, but it's something you need to navigate through with your partner. So when we think about, and you think, well, gosh, how many people have sex 4 or more times a week? Okay, well, if you're in that group, kudos. Again, it's all good. Whatever group you're in, it's all good. But that's only about 6% of the population. It's very rare having sex that often. But that is an excellent question. And
Yeah.
It does slow down as men and women age. And it has to have to do with some physiologic things like the hormone testosterone, which you'll hear a lot more about during the episodes to come.
Great. And we got a couple comments that came in from Anthony Minter. This is definitely a great topic of discussion, already answering some of my burning questions that I had. And he posted one of his burning questions coming up here. When you talked about emotional intimacy, you spoke about it from a female perspective. Can men have a need to be emotionally stimulated also?
That's such a good question. And here's the thing. Absolutely. Men and women both everyone has feelings, everyone has emotions, everybody experiences different emotions, sadness, happiness, joy, all kinds of different emotions, both men and women. So emotional intimacy is is really intimacy around emotions and around those feelings and things. And so both men and women can have emotional intimacy. It's a great question. Absolutely true. Men, we got emotions just like women, right, Vic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Men actually, a lot of times people don't realize um, some of my some of my female partners that are partnered with men will say to me, gosh, I'm really surprised that he is so sensitive about some of these things and so hurt and upset. Everybody's got their stuff, and we all worry about, is it me? What's wrong with me? I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about some of the thoughts now with the plastics that we've been getting exposed to, that men are becoming more feminized because of the estrogens in these plastics? And maybe now we're just being more emotional just because we have more estrogen in our system.
I think the beauty of it is, I think a balance of yin and yang of each, the female, male, is a beautiful thing for most of us. I think then we can better relate to each other. But there are a lot of things in our environment that affect hormones. Women starting their periods earlier than ever because of the environmental things. And
Yeah.
I have heard about the plastics affecting things, but hopefully all those shared emotions that move us a little bit more towards the opposite sex, maybe it'll help us get along better and when we are paired with opposite sex. And I know conflict is in every type of relationship, and mismatches in desire are in every type of relationship, whether it's a man and a man, a woman and a woman. In my clinic, I always say, bring your partner in. If they're comfortable, we love to work together with both of you. And I also tell people, truly, I say, if you have more than one partner and everybody gets along, that's okay too. Everybody can come into the clinic and we can all work together, because if we don't all work on it, it's not going to get better.
Yeah. Well, it's great. We've really got a lot of folks that are watching the show live. Really appreciate the big audience that you started off with. So it's
Definitely.
great.
Definitely. And so great. So I see another comment from Anthony who says, I
I
feel
feel,
like,
yeah.
yep, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Vic.
I feel like as you age, some of the traditional beliefs about roles and responsibilities for physical intimacy changes. A lot of things change with age.
That that's the truth for sure. Because there's so many scary things that happen as we get older. Hair is growing out of ears and all kinds of craziness. So I think quite a few things happen as we age. But that's a great idea for an episode, to talk about sexual changes with aging, because
Mhm.
I have done that talk, and I do have some people who can do that talk, and that would be really interesting to talk about for sure. So I like that idea a lot. But yes, so many physical things change as we age. A couple things before we close out that I would like to bring your attention to. I would like to do one thing before we end. Breathing's powerful. It's super, super powerful. I do deep breathing with my vets and my patients all the time. So I'd like you to put your feet flat on the floor. I'd like you to center yourself, and I'd like you to very slowly breathe in about 4 counts and breathe out about 4 counts, filling your lungs completely from your abdomen and your chest. Fill your lungs completely. And as you exhale, feel yourself just relax every muscle in your body. And I want you to start that deep breathing. And I want you to realize this truth: you are not broken. Don't put that out there in the universe, because you are not broken. You are an infinite, amazing soul in a finite body. You are miraculous, and you are whole, and you are worthy. You are worthy of love, and you are worthy of deep, intimate relationships with others. That is the truth. And that's the truth I hope you walk away with from the episode tonight, is that you are whole, you are infinite, and you are worthy. What's coming up next? One of my favorite people in the whole universe, Dr. Susan Kellogg-Spatt, will be joining us next week. She is my go-to person for what female sexual dysfunction. If I have a difficult thing. She is my point person that I go to. She knows more about female sexual health and female sexual dysfunction than anybody I know, and I love her dearly. She's a great speaker. She's brilliant. She's amazing. And Vic, can you roll what's going to...
Dr. Jeff welcomes renowned sexologist Susan Kellogg-Spade for an engaging discussion on female sexual health. Together, they explore the intricacies of female desire, arousal, and satisfaction, highlighting the physical, emotional, and societal factors that shape women's sexual well-being. They also address some of the most common sexual challenges women face, offering valuable insights and practical advice for navigating these issues. This episode is essential for anyone seeking to understand and support female sexuality. Join us next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy.
I can't thank you enough for being with us this evening. We did reach our goal. We're trying to keep it to 30 to 45 minutes, not too long. So we really, I'm just so honored that you spent your evening with me and that you were here. I hope you'll let other people know. We will be informing and empowering people. You know, you don't always get the facts on sex and intimacy, but Dr. Jeff talks about sex and intimacy because you need to know the facts and the evidence-based information. So thank you for joining us. It has been such a pleasure. Be blessed.